Hello, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The 2015 session of the General Assembly in Annapolis has concluded, and many groups are looking at the decisions that were made during this session. Ilaya Hopkins from the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce will give us the business point of view. There will be a new method of voting in Maryland at the next election cycle. Graciela Rivera-Oven is here to give us a preview. One of the new initiatives that came out of the legislature or in legislatures around the country is ABLE, a bill that would use the 529 idea to enable parents of disabled children to save tax-deferred payments for the basic needs of their children when they become adults. Mariana Cordier, a local attorney, here to explain. Agencies that provide housing and support to disabled adults continue to have concerns about minimum wage laws in the state. Tim Wiens, the executive director of Jubilee, will explain why this is such an issue. Elliot, welcome back.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Well, I love these sort of check-off or checklist sessions. We talked before the legislature started. You were here. We're talking the new governor coming in and the new legislature. It's basically done in Annapolis. The dust is settling still. So give us a little review of what happened.
The part-time legislator in Maryland meets for 90 days, and they ended the 2015 session at midnight, April 13th. And the businesses fared pretty well. We were delighted to see last year in 2015 an establishment of the Maryland Economic Development and Business Climate Commission. They worked very hard over the course of the year, chaired by Norm Augustine, formerly of Lockheed Martin, to listen to concerns from businesses around the state. They wrote an interim report during the session that had 32 recommendations, and 5 pieces of legislation came out of that.
Whoa. You mean a commission actually resulted in something other than just collecting dust?
And pretty significant things. The biggest, probably with the most immediate impact, is a restructuring of the Department of Business and Economic Development.
Okay.
This is the state agency that is charged with marketing Maryland to businesses around the country, trying to attract new businesses here, but also making sure that our businesses that are here can grow and expand and hire more residents. So it will have a Secretary of Commerce now in the governor's office, which is new, and the department itself will be run by an executive director.
Okay. I know that a lot of people have questions about this, but give me a piece of legislation that either passed or didn't pass that you saw as very important for the business.
The Montgomery County Chamber has a long track record of supporting transportation infrastructure.
Sure.
And it began with a Blue Ribbon Commission a few years ago about funding for transportation projects. That resulted in a gas tax a few years ago. And there was an attempt this year to roll back that automatic increase. It is pegged to inflation, and that's really important because these transportation projects, which are desperately needed around the entire state,
they don't fall outside of inflation, do they?
No, they do not. Costs continue to go up, and it was an important thing to make sure that repeal was not passed.
Now, there's a website, and people can see how things went and all of your goals and objectives this year. What is that?
Our website is mcccmd.com, and out of the 2,000 bills that were introduced, we tracked about 100, and the 60 where we submitted testimony in favor or against is posted on our website for everyone to see.
Okay.
I was going to ask about the gas tax, though, because I know that is a hard issue and people get really nervous. I think most of the population thinks that their gas prices will go up if the gas tax goes up.
It doesn't affect the price of gas. I mean, it is a fee that is collected at the tank when you buy it. But the gas tax in Maryland hadn't been increased since 1992. And again, we've got roads that need to be repaired, we've got new roads that need to be built, and most importantly, we have transit projects that are going to help keep our economy moving. And without dedicated funding, and another thing that came out of last year's election was a constitutional amendment to protect that money that is collected through the gas tax. So it's not a tax that goes into the general fund that allows the government to continue to grow necessarily. The monies collected from that motor fuel revenue go specifically to transportation.
But your point is it does go up a little bit, but it's a small marginal increase that we really don't feel. is the
Well, you know,
compared to what the
and
benefits are.
frankly, the price of gas has gone down recently, so yeah, it's not something that is as burdensome.
No, and I heard the federal funds for like the roads and upkeeps and so on are pretty much going to disappear within the next year. So that's going to put a huge pressure on our state.
Right. We
to
do
make-
some work at the federal level too, and of course that Federal Highway Transportation
Right.
Fund is critically important to states like Maryland. So we will continue to implore our legislators at the federal level to keep that fund going.
Let me ask you a question. There was an attempt, I think, by Governor Hogan to reduce taxes for small businesses. What happened with that?
That one did not make it across the finish line. It was an acknowledgement that small businesses who are subject to the personal income tax often pay a lot to keep their business going, and so it was an attempt to relieve them of a personal property tax by allowing them to have a slight subtraction modification, and unfortunately that did not make it through. But it'll be back next year.
Were
I
you
guess.
guys in support of that? Or
Yes, we were.
Okay, that's great.
What, looking ahead, Purple Line is an issue of importance and with transportation. I don't want to get into politics, but where is the Purple Line now, in your sense?
Well, you know, there's money in the budget, a placeholder in the budget. The governor understands the complexity of this project and did not want to make any hasty decisions, and has worked with the 4 companies that are the concessionaires interested in building this project. They have the extension till August, but we should be hearing within 30 days what the governor plans to do.
About 10 seconds left. Any final word on Chamber, the Annapolis? More to
You
come?
know, we had a new governor administration. A third of the General Assembly was new. We are really appreciative that there is an acknowledgement that business helps to support a strong community. And the more we can attract businesses and help our existing businesses, the better it is for all of the services.
Wood Longstanding, a politician a long time ago, said the best form of welfare is a job. I believe that's in business.
Business is a great way to combat poverty.
Thank you very much, Ilaya. Hello there, Graciela Rivera-Oven, the host of Revista Semanal, the great program on this channel. Welcome. We're talking about ballots. We're going to see big changes, huh?
We are. So I just want to go back a little bit. So we had the last election, one of the worst turnouts in voter participation ever. It was less than 18% for the general. The primary was less than 11%. So
In Montgomery County, I mean, a place
In
where you
Montgomery
think that
County.
people are thoughtful and all that, 18% is pitiful.
yes, it is. And it was not just Montgomery County, but it was pretty much across the state. So they were looking at maybe that the time the primaries and the general election, maybe the times when they were actually taking place was not the most convenient time for people to go out and vote. So a couple of things. They changed the date for the primaries and the general elections for the presidential
Okay.
elections in 2016. So we're going to have early voting and the primaries in April,
Okay.
the end of April. And the general election is going to be the last week of October is going to be the early voting,
Right.
and November 3rd is going to be the general election.
Which is where the general election everywhere in the country is
Exactly.
that same
So
day, right?
it's yes.
Right.
So it's following the same pattern of others
And
of other
is
states.
early voting helping? Is that helping with turnout, do you think?
It is actually. I think early voting is it's been a great tool to have. But even with the early voting in the last election,
still
the primaries were not as
Yeah, the
as
population
well
has
as-
showed a real distinct apathy for the process and the politicians and
But-
the candidates.
Well, so now we're going to add a new ingredient to the puzzle,
Right.
which is a new way of voting again.
But on the voting, I mean, I know there's some issues with this, but isn't there, and we've talked about this for years on this program with different folks, the ability of hackers to get in and disrupt electronic balloting, doesn't that, I mean, you shake your head, it's a similar thing that we see others, but it's a real issue out there in
Anything's
other
a real
places.
issue if you want to
Right.
make it an issue.
Sure.
I think the
Well,
proof
not that I want to make an issue. I mean,
no, but I'm thinking. I think the proof is in the pudding. I haven't heard any case throughout the time that we had the automated voting to actually have any factual facts that had happened.
So
There's glitches with
Right.
any computerized system,
Right.
and with any system when you have millions of people using it, you're always going to run into issues.
I just think that we spend so much money to go electronic, And there are protections of firewalls. I mean, everything has. Chicago's proven that you don't need a computer for the dead to vote.
But let's go back here. Let's go back to say so we've kind of taken the story here. So tell us what the story is.
Well, the
in terms of
story is
changes.
now we're going to go back to paper.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to go back to paper, and you're going to go and you're going to vote on the way you used to vote, and then you're going to get in line
So
again.
the way we used to, I mean, there were a number of different ways that we used to vote. We had machines, and then we had the scanner going
right.
through.
Well, you're going to fill
a,
out. You're going to fill out a paper ballot, and then you're going to put it through a scanner.
Okay, so the paper ballot. So we're gonna circle. It's like the standardized tests.
And you're going to stand in 3 lines.
Can we mail in our ballots?
I mean, that's the thing.
No,
You're
one
going to
of-
stand in 3 lines.
But isn't one of the issues also in the past when you had I'm thinking of the stray lines and who's the person
if
actually
they
voting
didn't
for
fill it out correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so did they vote? Did they not vote? I mean,
Similar to the butterfly ballot.
Well, at the
issues.
moment, though, you're going to take it to the scanner.
Okay.
You, the voter, is going to take it to the scanner.
And-
if there's an issue, then you will know right there.
And the scanner will come up and tell you who you voted for, and then
Right.
you can make the change if need
Exactly.
be.
Confirm. that's
Right,
what-
exactly, yeah.
But it sounds
So-
like it will take a little longer. We should all plan to leave a little more time at the voting.
Well, in theory,
place.
they think this might be a little bit faster, but we don't know because this has never
Right.
been done before,
But
right?
but we're going to do it in Rockville, right?
We're going to do it in Rockville, so
Okay.
we'll see how it goes. I know there was an election in Virginia when they did it, but it was a very small pool of voters. In Montgomery County, we have over 800,000 registered voters. So
So
we'll
going to
see.
Rockville, I mean, the integrity of the ballot box, whether it's a real issue or not a real issue, I mean, the confidence that our vote is actually being counted.
Right.
I mean, isn't that something that adds to the apathy that we don't think that our vote really counts?
I don't think so. I don't think it has anything to do with that, quite honestly, in the sense. I think people are just tuned off by just the negative politics in general.
Yeah, I don't think it's how you cast your
State and
ballot.
local.
Yeah.
I think it's just mainly, that the loss of faith maybe in the system.
Okay.
Not liking the candidates.
there was a bill. There was a bill that was
She said it,
introduced
not me.
this session.
We've only got 30 seconds.
Called a Blue Ribbon Commission on Voter Engagement, and looking at new ways to increase, our changing demographics, our changing
Right.
population.
And unfortunately, it did not
Did not make
pass,
it
which
this
is
time, but-
why does common sense stuff never pass?
it'll be back.
That's a problem.
It's a problem. We'll be back. Why doesn't it pass? What a great way to end. Confusion. Thank you, Gracie.
You're welcome.
Gracie. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Mariana Cordier, this is fantastic to see you.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So many times we discuss immigration issues, we
Yes.
discuss other issues. Now we're going to a whole different area. And it's
Yes.
great. The second half of our program really is going to be about disability issues and nonprofits dealing with disability folks. What is this? ABLE and 529s? Why don't you explain a little bit what situation
so,
is?
President Obama in 2014, December 2014, signed the federal law called the ABLE Act, which is the Achieving a Better Life Experience
Okay.
for disabled adults who are designated as disabled when they're children, before they turn 26.
And we've heard so many times on this program about the difficulty. Everything's great with kids, but
But you
it's
have to
then
be poor. The children have to be considered poor, and I say quotation marks poor, so that they qualify for their SSI, for their Medicaid, for the Social Security disability
okay.
support. So the struggle has been that if parents want to save for the children, or they have money to provide hopefully for the future, doing so would trigger maybe a suspension or a termination of
Gotcha.
those benefits. What this law allows is kind of like the 529 accounts that parents use for college. Now they can have an account set up for their disabled child who, when they're an adult, and have these expenses for housing, transportation,
Sure.
education, job training, health, all those. It won't affect their Medicaid. It won't
Okay.
affect their SSI. It won't have them be outside of being able to accept and use these monies for their daily expenses and the other benefits
So we
that they
talked
need.
earlier about the program,
Yes.
that this was federal legislation, but
Yes.
it requires each state
Yes,
to have
each state
to implement
has
it for
to,
themselves.
pass a law that gives what limits they want to apply
Okay.
to. The federal government's is 100,000 in the account. So,
Per year or total?
well, I believe it's per year,
Okay.
but don't quote me on that because I haven't completely
That's fine. That's
gotten
fine.
all the research.
Virginia is the
just
first one, right?
is the first state to pass it. The governor signed it, I believe, on Tuesday. And it was very exciting to see them do that. And so they've set it up. So now in Virginia, if you have a disabled child or an adult child who is found disabled before the age of 26, that's
Okay.
the requirement, they can now establish these accounts for them and use now more than just the trust account kind of set up to have
Okay.
these special disability accounts.
Fantastic.
What
And-
about existing 529s for families that are putting money in those kinds of vehicles to save for college and education? Can they, if the legislation passes, can they then use those for these other
Well,
life
those
circumstances?
529 accounts are very specific as to children going to college. So those aren't going to change. What this does, though, is it creates a special designation account. We say they're like 529s, but they're not 529s.
Okay.
Right.
And these are for the children that, obviously have a disability that affects their ability to, have an employment that will pay for and generate enough income to pay for their living expenses. And that's what it's called ABLE, for better,
Good.
life experience, so that they're not, subject to a lot of the hardships of trying to maintain housing. Jubilee obviously deals a lot with that, and they know and they can speak to that.
Yeah, and I think it really fits into the direction that services are going, because there's a lot of, used to be you kind of got a package of services and everything was paid for. Now, we're helping people live in their own homes, they're getting their own jobs, but the system is really Medicaid driven, and so they have to be very careful about how much they earn, how much assets they have, and they don't have those resources to kind of fill the gaps.
And the foresight of allowing the parents who can earn and who can save for their children to kind of alleviate a little bit the government system, without causing the children to lose or these adults to lose those services that are so important. It's a great, I think, combination.
We've got less than a minute left, so I want to make sure that everybody's got a chance to focus on what issues. I mean, there are issues that come up.
Right. So Maryland needs to pass it.
And I think they're working on it.
And they're
I think
working
they
on
will.
it. Yes.
I think they
Yes.
will.
You mentioned Greg Zucker.
Yeah, Delegate Greg Zucker.
Wonderful
is-
delegate.
Is,
I mean, Craig,
has
what's that, Craig?
championing this,
No, it's Craig Zucker.
and I haven't followed exactly where it is, but I think it'll pass, if not this year, next year.
Yeah,
It is
definitely.
not atypical for a pice of legislation to come up 1, 2, sometimes 3 years before
Right.
it
No, I'm
passes.
not criticizing the legislature or anything, but I think it's super important because we have a good number of disabled adults who have their parents living, who are able to now maybe adjust their planning and their investment, tax, retirement to be able to do something for their children to reassure themselves that when they're gone, they're taken care of.
It's great. Thank you, Mariana. I
Sure.
appreciate it. Well, we're talking about taxes and adjustments, financing, everything else. Maybe over to Jubilee Housing. We've got this is Jubilee. We've got Tim Wiens. Thank you very much, Tim Wiens.
Good to be here.
What's happening with all of this wonderful world?
Well, the big issue for us has been around the minimum wage laws, both in Montgomery County and in the state of Maryland. As you probably recall, Maryland increased its minimum wage laws last year, as did Montgomery County. Maryland's will eventually go up to $10.10 an hour. In Montgomery County, it'll go up to $11.50, and this is over a period of time. And so most of our funding for our services comes from the state of Maryland and some from Montgomery County. So when that law was being proposed, we were for it. We wanted to be able to pay our employees higher wages, and some of them are below some of those thresholds. But we needed it from the state, and so when the minimum wage law was passed, they built in rate increases over the next 4 years.
Okay.
But Governor Hogan, wanting to, kind of ramp back increases in state funding, cut those in half. And so there was a kind of a skirmish over that in Annapolis, and there were some compromises made. And so instead of getting 3.5% next year, we'll get 3%, but we'll get the other rates going forward, so that our At Jubilee, the range of starting hourly wage is like $10.50 to about $15. So some of it are below, and we need to bring those up, and we need the state to help us with that. So we were happy with the outcome of that.
It's a great example, though, of how sometimes legislation that is proposed and working its way through doesn't always take into account all the unintended consequences. And you and your colleagues have done a great job bringing voice to that, because I don't think it was anyone's intention to make their hard work even harder, and your grants, less effective. But that's why it's so important to advocate and to share your perspectives and to push for the kinds of legislation that you want, because and to vote.
Right. I mean, if you don't
really
like what's
shapes
going on, we have an election coming up, and you can
In
vote.
Rockville.
Yeah.
But
It's a very broad, the minimum wage is a very broad kind of instrument. And so there are a lot of people that are adults that really need that to make a living, but there are kids in high school that probably don't. And some of the folks that we serve, people with disabilities, who are, that may cut them out as well. It may jeopardize their benefits. So it has consequences that people haven't completely thought through.
Well, it is unfortunate that I think organizations like yours, like Ilaya has said, are kind of the ones who are kind of in a way suffering the consequences of the law. But it is also, a fact that we live in a county and that is very expensive to live in. And without passing the minimum wage, you still will have thousands of folks living below the poverty level.
Exactly.
So.
Now, before you answer this, there's a website people can go to learn more about what's going on in the organization.
www.jubileemd.org.
Perfect.
Everything you want to know about Jubilee and disability issues is there.
So what we really advocate for is access to opportunity to find jobs that are not necessarily minimum wage jobs. That's why the business climate is so important, because we want to attract employers that are bringing those knowledge economy jobs, giving people access to opportunities.
You're going to talk about some of the minimum wage issues coming up. I mean, both of these. This is it's very interesting, because we look at that minimum wage.
We're actually for it. I mean, because we want our employees, our low-paid employees, our direct service, and we want those wages to go up. And this is a vehicle for that to happen. So even though we've had to have some skirmishes with at the state level, it's a good fight for us, because it's helping us go in the direction that we want to go.
When we look at it, I mean, $10.50 an hour is approximately $22,000 a year, which is really difficult to live in this expensive county. And so, when you get in with members of the disability community, that it's about working as much as it is about earning. And then with the Medicaid, with the high school kids and all that stuff, it's really, it's tough to put it all into one place.
The Earned Income Tax Credit, which is a piece of legislation that also comes up pretty regularly in Annapolis and at Montgomery County, is really one of the best vehicles to help low-income earners mitigate the fact that they're living in a high-cost area.
And capture and not have so much tax to be paid, and with progressive taxes.
But even with that population, you look at our public safety population, our nurses, even our teachers and so on, they cannot afford to,
the middle class
live
in Montgomery County is really struggling. I mean, it's not about being poor, it's about just being, in the middle class, where everything is extraordinarily expensive. You're living paycheck to paycheck. Any blip along the way could really
set you back.
And you need two incomes. I mean, for most people, you need two incomes to make it. And so if anything happens to either party, or somebody has to take off because of family,
and I'm sure
or
you
whatever.
see,
About 20 seconds.
We hear of cases where parents actually divorce when they have disabled children in order to be able to qualify for some of these services, which is very sad
that is
to
very
actually
sad.
see. So.
Well, wait a minute. We can't stop. We're all laughing, smiling now. We're not going to stop, and very sad. This is a great group, and thank you all for joining me today for this show. And thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to come back again next week at this very same time.